number 10 spot today we have musical instruments. Two parts of a destroyed clarinet as well as a violin that was played by bandmaster Wallace Hartley were found among the wreckage of the Titanic. I know musical instruments aren't exactly a terrifying discovery, but the discovery reminds us of the heartbreaking story of the Titanic's band. As the Titanic sank, it is famously known that the band played on despite the absolutely horrific incident that was taking place around them. At first it was widely believed that they did this because they were ordered to, and for the record, if this were the case, that still would have been insanely brave of them. But as it turns out, this is far from true. The band members were in fact not ship employees, which means that they had the same rights as any passengers to leave. So why didn't they? Well, it is now widely believed that it most likely was so that they could use their music to help calm people so that they wouldn't panic. That's some major bravery right there. In our number 9 spot today we have a men's shoe. This artifact is one of the rarest to be shown of the items that have been recovered from the Titanic wreckage because of the fact that it is in such poor condition. All that remains of the shoe are the welt, top cap, and just a touch of the insole. This artifact does a couple things. It reminds you of the very real humans who became victims of this tragedy, and it also reminds you of the unrelenting nature of the ocean. Seeing the personal belongings of the passengers, regardless of knowing who specifically the shoe belonged to in their story, just adds a personal element, like you almost knew them. And then seeing how torn up the shoe has become is a strong reminder to us all that we truly are no match for Mother Nature, and the ocean is one of the most powerful and frightening things on the earth. In our number 8 spot today we have a love letter. Richard Geddes was a cabin attendant on the Titanic who wrote a love letter to his wife while aboard, but unfortunately she would never go on to receive it. The letter was written on the original Titanic stationery, and it even had its original White Star Line envelope when it was found. While this story in itself is of course extremely sad, and again one of those reminders of the human side of those who were in this incident, this letter also contained something else beside utterings and confessions of love. It also featured a description that Richard wrote for his wife of a near collision that the Titanic had with the SS City of New York, obviously prior to the terrible iceberg incident. There were people who had witnessed this near collision and believed that it was a bad omen for the Titanic.
Number 7. Deja vu. Have you ever been walking down the street and gotten the sudden feeling like you'd done that before even though you haven't? This is a phenomenon that is known as deja vu, or already seen. As of yet, there is no real scientific explanation for why people all over the world experience these feelings, and there are theories that range from memory problems to glitches in the Matrix. People who believe that deja vu is evidence of parallel universes describe it like this. Think of a radio where you can only hear one frequency at a time. The parallel universes beside us are at different frequencies. However, it's possible that for one small moment the universes might vibrate at the same frequency and become in sync. Since parallel universes are all supposedly just slightly different, when these in sync moments happen and you believe that you've already had this conversation before, it's possible that you feel that way because you did, just in a parallel universe. Number 6. The double slit experiment. Okay, this one is very sciencey, so bear with me. The double slit experiment was performed in the 1920s and seemed to offer convincing evidence of potential multiple parallel realities. The theory proposes that if tennis balls were fired at a wall through a single slit, then the marks on the wall would line up with the slit. So if you created 2 slits, it would create 2 lines on the wall. And if you fired waves through the wall, they would go through the splits but still continue to spread out and leave multiple lines on the wall. And electrons should theoretically act in the same way that tennis balls do, but they didn't. They also made multiple lines as though they had been interacting with each other in the way that the waves did. But even when fired one at a time, it still made 2 sets of waves. For this to happen, it would mean that each electron somehow managed to travel through both slits. When they tried to film the electrons, they instead went back to just forming 2 lines like tennis balls. So this suggests that while parallel universes may be interacting with our own, we just don't have the technology to see it. Number 5. The blue rock. Alright, after that, let's go to something way more simple. In fact, let's go to something as simple as a rock. In 1990, in Sierra Leone, West Africa, an archaeologist found a puzzling bright blue stone. When it was sent for studies, it was found that it was not similar to anything that could be found on Earth, and it was determined that it was not from this planet at all. One person who once held the stone said, "It was perplexing and I had no idea what I was looking at, and I had no point of reference to compare it to anything else I had previously seen or handled before." Parts of this stone have come into the possession of many collectors over the years, and it is incredibly highly valued, likely because many people believe believe that, similarly to the London Hammer, this is an artifact that has traveled to our own Earth from a parallel universe. Number 4. The Mandela Effect. The term the Mandela Effect first came around in 2009, when a woman named Fiona realized that she and many others shared a false memory of Nelson Mandela having died in prison, when in reality he was still alive. She created a website to explain her observance of this phenomenon, shocked by just how many people all over the globe could possibly share this false memory. Over the years, many people have come together to share different examples of this Mandela Effect. Some of the most famous ones being the spelling of the Berenstain Bears title, Darth Vader saying "Luke, I am your father" instead of "No, I am your father," and Curious George having a tail. Many people believe that a possible explanation for this is that the false memories are correct, but they're correct in a parallel universe, the memories bleeding over into our own world, as how else could so many people share this same fake memory? Number 3. The cold spot. Alright, back to science once again. When the Big Bang created our universe, the wavelengths of light expanded, changing the color and temperature of the universe to what we now perceive as black, creating the cosmic microwave background which maps the creation of our universe according to the Big Bang. While scientists were studying this background, they discovered what they referred to as the cold spot, being the size of 1.8 billion light years. While also being colder, it apparently also contains 20% less matter than it should. So how could they possibly explain the existence of this cold spot and why it is the way that it is? Well, experts believe that this is evidence of a parallel universe having crashed into ours through quantum entanglement, impact forcing energy out of the area and leaving behind the cold spot. Number 2. The Hadron Collider. Researchers at the Super Collider in Switzerland started researching in 2015, hoping to find evidence of alternate universes. They have done various different tests trying to find these parallel universes that would not exist in the visible 3 dimensions of our own universe, but instead be made up of dimensions that we cannot perceive. One scientist theorized that the Hadron Collider could reveal particles that could only exist in these other dimensions, and being able to see them would give us almost undeniable evidence of the existence of parallel universes in line with our own. She said that these particles would have the exact same properties of particles in our own universe, but would have greater mass. All of this is still theoretical right now, but plenty of theoretical things from the past have been discovered and made reality, so it may not be long. Number 1. The Tau-Red Traveler. In 1954, a European plane landed in Tokyo. On the plane was a man who spoke several different languages, and he told the people there that he was visiting on business. He then gave them his passport, which said that he was coming from a place called Tau-Red. If you've never heard of this country, then don't worry, you're not alone. That's because it doesn't actually exist, and it's a fictional country that is in between the borders of France and Spain. The man's passport was visa stamped, and he even provided a bank statement from the Tau-Red Bank. His documents were taken and held in airport security while the man was left in a guarded hotel room waiting for police to arrive. But when they got there, the man was gone. People believe that this man was a visitor from a parallel universe where European history was different and led to the creation of the country of Tau-Red.
Starting off this list at our number 10 spot, we have the crystal skulls. The ancient crystal skulls found in Mexico and Central America are a group of pre-Columbian artifacts that are believed to be over 1,000 years old. These skulls are made out of clear or milky quartz and are intricately carved to resemble human skulls. Despite being discovered in the 19th and 20th centuries, their true origin and purpose remains a mystery. According to legend, the crystal skulls were created by the Maya or the Aztecs and are said to possess magical powers that can heal or grant spiritual enlightenment to those who come in contact with them. Some people believe that the crystal skulls are extraterrestrial in origin and that they hold the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe. Many theories have been put forth over the years about the purpose and significance of the crystal skulls. Some researchers believe that they were used for religious or ceremonial purposes, while others speculate that they may have been used for divination, or even as tools for communication with otherworldly beings. Despite decades of research and study, the true origins and purpose of the crystal skulls remain shrouded in mystery. In our number 9 spot today, we have Linear A. Linear A is an undeciphered script used by the Minoan civilization between 1800 and 1450 BCE. The script was first discovered in 1900 by British archaeologist linguist Arthur Evans, and was used to write the Minoan language, which is also still largely unknown. Linear A is composed of over 100 different signs, including pictograms and ideograms, but it is believed to be a syllabic script, meaning that each sign represents a syllable or sound. Despite numerous attempts by researchers to decipher the script, its meaning and purpose remains a mystery. The mystery surrounding Linear A is compounded by the fact that the Minoan civilization itself is shrouded in mystery, with little known about its social structure, economy, or religious practices. The decipherment of Linear A could potentially shed light on these enigmatic aspects of Minoan culture, but for now the script remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the ancient world. In our number 8 spot today we have the Tartaria tablets. These are a set of 3 clay tablets discovered in 1961 in Romania, dating back to the Neolithic era around 5300 BCE. The tablets contain a series of symbols that are thought to be the oldest form of writing in Europe. While there is still much debate about the meaning of the symbols and whether they constitute as a true writing system, many researchers believe that they represent a form of proto-writing or proto-cuneiform. The tablets have caused controversy in the archaeological community, with some experts questioning their authenticity and others arguing that they represent a significant discovery that could change our understanding of early human communication. Despite their importance, the Tartaria tablets remain largely shrouded in mystery, and their true meaning and purpose may never be fully understood. In our number 7 spot today we have a pocket watch. Okay, this artifact most certainly isn't the scariest one on today's list, but the story behind who it belonged to is one for the books. Sinai Cantor was 34 years old when he was a passenger on the Titanic. On board with him was his wife Miriam, and the pair were from Russia. They purchased second-class passenger tickets, which at the time cost them £26, which is about $3,666 in today's money. When tragedy struck and the Titanic was sinking, Sinai immediately thought of his wife. He was able to get her aboard one of the life rafts thankfully, and as far as I know, she was rescued from the icy waters. Unfortunately, the same could not be said for him, however, as he ended up being one of those who passed away in the sinking of the ship. During rescue efforts, this pocket watch ended up being recovered from his body. In our number 6 spot today we have the inspection card. This inspection card once belonged to a woman named Marion Meanwell. What could possibly be worrisome about an inspection card? Well, it shows how Marion was not intended to be on the Titanic, but by some turn of events, she unfortunately found herself as one of the passengers. The card shows that she was originally meant to be traveling on a ship called the Majestic. For some reason, the trip she originally had planned was delayed, and she instead was assigned to the ill-fated Titanic. You can see that the word Majestic was crossed out on her card, which shows us the change in plans. If only people were able to see what was about to strike and could have warned her. In our number 5 spot today we have the Titanic radio. Okay, don't yell at me. This is a piece of the ship that has not yet been recovered, but it's the focus of much debate on whether or not it should be retrieved from the wreckage. Known in 1912 as the Marconi wireless telegraph machine, the radio on the Titanic sent distress calls to nearby ships that ended up saving the lives of 700 people in lifeboats. Despite how many people died in the Titanic tragedy, many of their bodies have never been recovered, which is why there were debates about whether or not to retrieve the artifact, because of the fact that there might still be remains located in the same area as the radio is. Lawyers have argued against the recovery of the radio because the dive plan did not include the prospect of there being human remains located down there. It also was argued because in order to retrieve it, they would need to cut into the ship's radio compartment, which was strongly opposed by preservation advocates. As of right now, it appears as though the dive to retrieve the radio will still occur, but it isn't exactly clear when. This radio would be a very valuable artifact, but it also would hold an eerie tale of exactly when and how the radio was used during the final moments of the Titanic. In our number 4 spot today we have the telegraph. Separate from the radio we just talked about, the ship's telegraph machine was recovered in 1987, and this was used to relay commands to the engine room. So it was used as a communication device on board rather than to communicate with other ships. This telegraph machine is likely the one that was used to communicate to turn away from the iceberg in the North Atlantic Ocean. Unfortunately, these commands came way too late as the ship struck the iceberg only 37 seconds after it was finally seen, and we all know what happened next. This telegraph was actually part of a Titanic auction that featured over 5,000 recovered artifacts that were selling for a combined some $200 million. In our number 3 spot today we have the bell. The bell from the crow's nest of the Titanic was recovered from the wreckage and returned to land, where it now resides in the Titanic Museum. The eerie story behind this bell is that it would have been the one that was rung 3 times by the lookout lookout, Frederick Fleet, in order to attempt to warn of the iceberg that was ahead. Frederick, as well as the other lookout who was with him, Reginald Lee, both ended up thankfully surviving the incident and went on to later explain what happened from their point of view. They explained that if they had been given binoculars to assist with their job, they could have seen the iceberg sooner. When asked how much sooner, Frederick replied, "Well, enough to get out of the way." In our number 2 spot today we have the Big Piece. This was a 15-ton section of the Titanic that ended up being recovered from the ocean floor. The wreckage of the Titanic was not found until 1985 when oceanographer Robert Ballard was doing a secret underwater expedition. The Big Piece is about 26 by 12 feet and it was once a section of the ship's starboard side hull. This piece also has a part of the original support beam that attached this piece to the frame of the ship. It is said that where this piece was located on the ship, basically everything else around it was absolutely obliterated when the ship split in two. This artifact is said to be the reminder of the most violent aspect of the sinking of the ship, which is a horrifying thought. It was found among many other smaller pieces of the ship that had all been broken up. In our number 1 spot today we have this cherub statue. In the remnants of the Titanic, they recovered a broken cherub statue that once found its home on the grand staircase of the Titanic. Aside from cherubs just being kind of creepy in general, there's something exceptionally eerie about this piece of religious iconography being at the center of such a huge disaster, as well as being found among the wreckage years later. Cherubs are usually known as bearers of the throne or creatures who attend to God, so it's just a little creepy to have one at the scene of a terrible disaster, as well as it making through all of the years and years that the Titanic was underwater waiting to be found. Starting off in our number 10 spot we have Leda and the Swan. In 2018, archaeologists made a cool but also kind of startling discovery as they were searching through the remains of the ancient city of Pompeii. Painted on a bedroom wall, archaeologists found a painting that depicts quite the sensual scene between the legendary Queen Leda and, well, a swan. Of course it was Zeus disguised as a swan, but it's still a swan and that's super weird. Zeus in disguise is said to have fallen into Leda's arms for protection from an eagle and then managed to seduce her, although there are some suggestions and interpretations that set a much darker scene. This discovery is unbelievable because seeing this kind of art on the wall of a bedroom of an ancient city that was destroyed by Mount Vesuvius erupting in 79 AD really makes you realize that 2,000 years is such a small amount of time in the history of Earth, and although we've progressed immensely, we're still the same humans. We just have slightly better taste in art. I honestly wish I could forget about this one. In our number 9 spot today we have the Cloudbuster. Okay, this one is kind of pseudo-scientific, but it could have serious implications and is much better left as far in the past as possible. In the 1950s, a man named William Reich created a device called the Cloudbuster that could manipulate certain kinds of energy that would end up affecting the atmosphere, and this would then change the weather patterns. It is said that the machine could affect a type of energy called orgone energy, and it is said that there was actually a successful demonstration of this machine way back in the 50s. Apparently people have tried to recreate it but have been unsuccessful, and it's actually to the detriment of them and the area surrounding them. Honestly, we spend a lot of time messing with this planet. It makes me a little nervous, I'm not gonna lie. In our number 8 spot today we have the zombie virus. I know The Walking Dead is a popular series, but none of us dream of living in that world. At least I hope not. What a literal nightmare. That is why in 2007, when the UK discovered that many of their caterpillars were falling victim to what became known as zombie virus, we all said we've had enough, especially now that we've all gone through a pandemic. That kind of energy needs to be as far away from me as possible. The caterpillars were being infected with baculovirus, which stops their molting and encourages them to continue eating. Once they've eaten a bunch and they're full to the brim, the virus then tells them to head high onto a leaf, which, like, if we weren't talking about a virus that's killing them, that would have been the cutest little sentence. High on a little leaf? Anyway, it's not cute and it's sad. Basically, once they're on this leaf, if a bird doesn't snatch them up, warning, this is kinda gross, their body liquefies and explodes, and then the virus is spread onto other caterpillars below. Yeah, see? Let's all move on and forget it ever happened. The caterpillars are good, everyone's fine. In our number 7 spot today we have the stone spheres from Costa Rica. These ancient stone balls found in Costa Rica are a collection of nearly perfect spherical stones ranging in size from a few centimeters to over 2 meters in diameter. These stone balls were created by the Dequise culture between 700 and 1530 CE, and they were discovered in southern Costa Rica in the 1930s. They have since become an archaeological mystery with many unanswered questions about their origins, purpose, or how they were made. One of the biggest mysteries surrounding the stone balls is how they were created. The spheres are made of granite and other hard stones, and they were perfectly shaped without the use of any modern tools or technology. Some have suggested that they were made using some sort of unknown technique, or that they were created with the help of extraterrestrial technology. Another mystery surrounding the stone balls is their purpose. Some believe that they were used as part of a game, while others argue that they had a more practical use, such as astronomical observations or as a status symbol. However, no definitive answers have ever been found. The stone balls have also raised questions about the Daquis culture itself. Despite their impressive creations, very little is known about the people and their language and written records, which have not survived. This lack of knowledge has made it difficult to fully understand the significance of the stone balls and their role in the culture. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Piri-Reis map. The Piri-Reis map is a world map created by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri-Reis in 1513. The map is notable for its accurate representation of South America and Antarctica, which were not officially discovered until centuries later. Of course, this means that what has puzzled researchers is the source of his knowledge. One theory is that Piri may have had access to ancient maps that are no longer in existence, such as the Library of Alexandria, which was destroyed in a fire in the 1st century BCE. Others speculate that he may have had contact with extraterrestrial beings who provided him with advanced knowledge of geography and cartography. What makes the Piri-Reis map even more mysterious is the presence of features that are not visible in modern maps. For example, the map includes a land bridge between South America and Antarctica, which has been confirmed by modern satellite imagery. However, this land bridge was only discovered by modern science in the 20th century. Another mystery surrounding the Piri-Reis map is the presence of a series of markings and symbols that appear to depict astronomical and astrological data. Some researchers believe that these symbols may have been used for navigation or even to track the movement of the stars. Despite decades of research and study, the true source of Piri-Reis's knowledge and the purpose of the markings on the map remain a mystery, making it one of the most enigmatic ancient artifacts to this day. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Antikythera mechanism. The Antikythera mechanism is an ancient Greek artifact discovered in 1901 by a group of sponge divers off of the coast of the island of Antikythera. The device, which is believed to date back to the 2nd or 1st century BCE, is a very complex mechanism made up of gears and cogs, and it is thought to have been used to predict astronomical events and the cycles of the solar and lunar calendars. What makes this mechanism so mysterious is its advanced technology and the fact that nothing else like it has been discovered from the same time period. The device is believed to have been incredibly sophisticated for its time, and its level of complexity was not achieved again until the development of similar technology during the Renaissance, over 1,000 years later. The mechanism is also mysterious because its purpose and origin are still not fully understood. Despite extensive research and analysis, there is still much that remains unknown about the device, including who built it and how it was used. The Antikythera mechanism remains a fascinating artifact, and it continues to capture the imagination of scientists, historians, and just the general public. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Voynich manuscript. The Voynich manuscript is a very mysterious book that dates back to the 15th century, written in an unknown script and illustrated with strange drawings of plants, animals, and astrological symbols. The manuscript is named after Wilfrid Voynich, a rare book dealer who acquired the book in 1912. What makes the Voynich manuscript so mysterious is the fact that no one has been able to decipher its contents or identify the language it is written in. The strange drawings and symbols have baffled scholars for centuries, and many theories have been proposed as to its purpose and origin. Some believe that the manuscript is a secret code or cipher, while others speculate that it is a lost alchemaic text or an early form of cryptography. Despite extensive efforts to decipher the manuscript, its secrets remain unsolved, and it continues to be a source of fascination and speculation for scholars and enthusiasts alike. The Voynich manuscript is a testament to the enduring power of mystery and intrigue, and it serves as a reminder of the vastness and complexity of human knowledge and understanding. Maybe this book that we have is holding on to some of the most important secrets that have just been lost to time. In our number 3 spot today, we have the works of old men. The works of old men are structures that were first observed from the air by a British pilot in 1927, and they are located near the Azraq Oasis in Jordan. There are hundreds of these wheel-like structures that are over 80 feet wide, some even as large as 200 feet. These huge structures have been dated back so far that they might just be the oldest man-made creations that we have ever found. While this is all amazing, we have absolutely no idea what what they are or why they were created. The theories range from things like sun tracking to ceremonies to some sort of spiritual relevance, but we really just aren't sure. While things like this are incredible finds, and it's amazing that some of the first man-made things still exist on our Earth, it is insane how we have no idea what they are or how to use them, and unfortunately, especially because of the fact that it's been thousands and thousands of years, it's most likely that the mysteries surrounding them are totally lost with the past. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Joppa stones. These stones were found by archaeologists in China. There were hundreds of discs made of stone that were found under a ton of dust inside of a cave. The notable thing about these discs is that they resemble phonography records with a hole in the center that leads into a spiral groove. These stones are at least 10,000 years old, and the groove in them is made up of super small hieroglyphics. Here's the kicker though, these hieroglyphics were deciphered and found to have stories of spaceships crashing into mountains. These spaceships were apparently being flown by what was called Joppa. After this discovery, the researcher who found it was ridiculed as people believed it was ridiculous, but years later some Russian researchers asked for a few of the stones to examine. Upon the Russian examination, they found some sort of extraordinary vibration or hum coming from the stones. After this, research on the stones either stopped or has just been hidden from the public. Finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Indus Valley Script. This is an ancient writing system that was used by the Indus Valley Civilization, one of the earliest known civilizations in the world. The script is believed to have been in use from sometime around 2600 to 1900 BCE, and it is one of the few ancient scripts that has yet to be deciphered. The Indus Valley Script consists of over 400 different symbols, which have been found on seals, pottery, and other artifacts from the civilization. Despite numerous attempts to decipher the script, researchers have been unable to identify the language or meaning behind the symbols. The mysterious nature of the Indus Valley Script has led to much speculation about the civilization that created it. Some researchers believe that the symbols may have been used for religious or ritual purposes, while others suggest that they may have been used for trade or administration. Regardless of their purpose, the symbols remain a fascinating mystery of the ancient world, and their true meaning may never be fully understood. Starting off at our number 10 spot, we have DNA. In the 1860s, Swiss chemist Johann Friedrich Meister was able to give a name to the molecule that is now known as DNA, which set up huge and very important scientific advancements to come. He initially set out to research white blood cells, which are of course a very key component of our immune system. When he carried out experiments that required adding salt solutions, he noticed that once he added acid, a substance separated from the solution. At first, he thought he had discovered something that was coming from the nucleus of the cell, and while he knew it was an important discovery, he had no idea just how important. He was a major perfectionist, however, so he was quite hesitant to tell others of his findings, so it was a few decades until his discovery was fully appreciated by the scientific community. After this, scientists were able to research further what he had discovered to give us all our much better understanding of DNA that we now have. Those scientists include people like Albrecht Kossel, who in 1881 was able to isolate the 5 nucleotide bases that are the building blocks of DNA, or Walter Fleming, who discovered a fibrous structure within the nucleus of the cell, which he named chromatin, but we now know as chromosomes. This is all to say that Johann's almost accidental discovery changed science forever, and not only was the discovery a shock to the scientific community, but also to Johann himself. In our number 9 spot today, we have penicillin. As it turns out, penicillin, which is an antibiotic that has saved most of us a lot of pain and suffering, was a bit of an accidental discovery, so it was a shock to both the world and the guy who created it. In 1928, Scottish biologist Alexander Fleming was returning home from a vacation. When he returned home and went back to work, he found a petri dish that he had left dirty was full of bacteria and mold, as I'm sure we would all expect it to be. With this gross discovery, however, came the realization that the bacteria was everywhere, except for where the mold was. After some further testing and further research, he realized that the mold was responsible for killing off this bacteria, and he was able to identify the mold as being from the genus Penicillium. This is what led to further testing and creation of the most used antibiotic, which is incredibly effective at curing a wide variety of bacterial ailments. In our number 8 spot today, we have bacteria resistance. Okay, so aside from penicillin, there are an array of other antibiotics and vaccines vaccines that have been created that have not only helped us survive as a human race, but have also improved our quality and length of life. This is all amazing and truly helpful, but the scientists who study things like this also made a scary discovery that while these treatments are doing great work, there are some microbes who are working just as hard, and they might be evolving faster than we can fight them. This is why the flu shot is created yearly, as the previous shot is ineffective against next year's bug. Or why hospitals are seeing some people have a simple cut turn into a potentially limb or even life-threatening situation because of the antibiotic-resistant staph bacteria. Or how there are illnesses jumping from animals to humans, or even how tuberculosis is seemingly making a comeback. These kinds of discoveries are extremely important because it can help us calculate next steps, but it's also incredibly frightening because while we might still be ahead for now, how long is that really gonna last? In our number 7 spot today we have Y2K. If you're 15 years old watching this video, listen up. Computers have been here for your whole life, but they really aren't that old. You're 15 and they're barely older than you. So when the year 2000 rolled around, everyone started freaking out because we didn't know if the computers knew about the year 2000. Basically, many computer programs at the time only accepted 2 digits for the year, like 99 instead of 1999. So everyone was freaked out that the computers would be unable to operate once the clock rolled over to 2000, because what if they think it's 1900 instead? People were worried that planes were gonna fall out of the sky, they thought that the system would reboot, think it's 1900 again, and be like, dang, we're supposed to be made out of wood. The pilot turns into the Wright brothers. Okay, but seriously, we're expecting the year change to bring down computer infrastructures like those for banking and power plants, but in the end, millions and millions of dollars were spent to create software and workarounds for this situation, and we entered a new millennia. Let's not even start talking about 2012. In our number 6 spot today we have teeth. Okay, people keep finding teeth. And like a lot of them. On 2 separate occasions, construction workers found more than 1,000 human teeth in one spot, and these 2 separate occasions happened in entirely different parts of the world. Workers in an Australian metro tunnel found a huge supply of human teeth that were over a century old, and with it they found some precious stones and cool artifacts, which made the whole teeth thing less worse, but I'm still undecided on whether or not it's worth it. Then, literally 2 months later, a team of construction workers in Georgia found another bunch of human teeth in the wall of a commercial building. My first thought is serial killer, but luckily this one isn't as grim. Documents showed that both of these places used to be the sites of dental offices, and the fact that these discoveries happened so close to one another was simply just a weird coincidence. In our number 5 spot today we have starlight. This is an insane substance that was created in the 1970s and 80s by a hairstylist and amateur chemist, Maurice Ward. Amateur chemist is like the funniest term in the world to me. Like, so was Walter White. Anyway, Maurice was able to create starlight, which was like a heat-resistant plastic that was virtually indestructible. It could withstand temperatures of up to 10,000 degrees Celsius, and it could withstand the force of 75 times that of an atomic bomb. Of course, people were begging Maurice for the recipe for this substance, and places like NASA were dying to get their hands on it. Well, Maurice was not about to let his superpower get out into the world because he feared what would happen if the recipe for it fell into the wrong hands. Seems like Maurice read a comic book or 2. Watch out, Tom Holland, Maurice is coming for your job. Maurice took the secret of how to make starlight with him to the grave and never told a soul how he managed to make it. It appears it may have been able to be recreated, however, or at least something similar, in the last few years by a company called ThermoShield. Maybe this will be a good thing, and maybe it's the beginning of the end. Can't wait till we find out. Hope they at least film it in IMAX. In our number 4 spot today we have Agent Orange. Okay, we've been having a silly fun time on this list today, but not everything can be silly and fun and sunshine and rainbows, and sometimes we have to talk about real life. Agent Orange is not Cody Banks' cousin, but it was an extremely potent herbicide that was used from 1961 to 1971 in the Vietnam War. It was intended to cut through the canopy of thick foliage in Vietnam in order to reveal the troops underneath, but instead it proved to be extremely deadly to humans. It caused cancers, birth defects, and so many more different health issues. And it's not like it was just a little bit. 21 million gallons of it were sprayed over Vietnam, which affected hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese citizens, and it also affected the US veterans who were exposed to it as well. While this is a dark part of history and it is difficult to hear about, it is also important that we don't forget things like these. Knowing our history is very important so we don't make the same mistakes again. In our number 3 spot today we have the Mars Climate Orbiter. Listen guys, we all make mistakes. mistakes. Sometimes when you hear about other people's mistakes, it makes you feel better about your own because at least I don't work for NASA, so when I make a mistake, I just have to read comments about it. No one is mad at me for wasting millions of dollars, just precious minutes of your life. The Mars Climate Orbiter was a robotic space probe that was launched by NASA in 1998 in order to study the Martian climate and then the Martian atmosphere. Unfortunately, in 1999, all communication with the spacecraft was lost because it ended up on a trajectory that flew it too close to the planet. Its fate either left it destroyed in the atmosphere or it escaped the planet's vicinity and ended up orbiting around the sun. Once an investigation into how this happened occurred, it was discovered that it was due to mismatched measurements between the two software systems, as NASA was using SI units while Martin Lockheed, who created one piece of ground software, used United States customary units. Yeah, I feel way less bad that I was 15 minutes late this morning. Sorry boss, I'm running on UK time right now. I guess I'm actually a couple hours early. In our number 2 spot today we have Osmosis Jones 2, Return of the Jones. Here's the thing, antibiotics are super important for us in our health and are one of the most important advancements of modern medicine, but because people use them improperly, bacteria that is resistant to the medicine we have is being created, and that is a big problem. We wish we could forget it, but we can't because it's a threat to us all. Have you ever had strep throat before and they're giving you antibiotics to treat it and they tell you to make sure you take all of them even if you feel better? Yeah, there's a reason. You gotta make sure that the thing is dead and gone before you stop taking those things, or else they can learn how to fight back against basically our only line of defense. The rise of these resistant bacteria would place us in a very dark time. We're not just talking about more infections, we're talking about a collapse of healthcare. We can't do surgeries, people can't get treatment, and it's awful. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. In our number 1 spot today we have the nothingness. You ever just sit back and think about how we're literally just floating through vast nothingness? Here on Earth, at least we have some kind of a sense of stability. Like, we're connected to the Earth through gravity, we have our cozy home in our solar system, we've got an orbit going around the sun, we've got a pet we call the moon. Things feel like home here. But when we think about it, the universe is impossibly large. Perhaps infinitely large, and we're just like smaller than a speck of dust within it. Every point in the universe is expanding away from every other point. There's no axis, there's no center, it's just endless space? I don't know. I get it, but I don't. It seems impossible, but it's just reality. I'm stressed, you're stressed, but we don't matter. What could possibly matter when there's just so much but absolutely nothing?
Like we always do with our number 10, we're going to be talking about anesthesia. Without anesthesia to stop the pain of surgery or put patients to sleep altogether, every minor operation we take for granted today will be one of the most painful things imaginable. It was discovered in 1801 by English scientist Humphrey Davy, who was experimenting with different mixes of gases when he combined nitrogen and oxygen to make nitrous oxide. When he inhaled this, he experienced euphoria, started laughing, then crying, and then passed out. Sounds like an average Friday night for me. When he kept experimenting with it, he also found that it made him completely numb to pain, so he recommended this to dentists and doctors, and the rest of the world was like, this is great, we like this, good stuff. At number 9, we've got electricity. Now this one revolutionized the world and brought you many of the home comforts that you guys take for granted. It almost literally brought us from the dark into the light. Now electricity has obviously existed as a fundamental property of the universe since the dawn of time, but it's hard to say when humans discovered it because there's a lot of examples of them knowing what it was throughout history, but it's fair to say we really started to understand it in the way we do today sometime in the 17th century. It was then that scientists invented an early electrostatic generator, knew the difference between positive and negative currents, and the properties of electrical conductors and insulators. And then came Benjamin Franklin with his kite and lightning, and then came the light bulb, and then the rest is history. It changed the world, and it charges my phone, that's why it's on our list. Now at number 8, we've got germ theory. Before the theory of germs was proposed, nobody seemed to have a clear understanding of how diseases were spread or food became spoiled and rotten. Then in 1856, Louis Pasteur came along and said that microscopic organisms that we now call germs are floating everywhere around us in the air, undetectable to the human eye. He proved that bacteria didn't just spawn randomly and instead existed all around us, waiting to multiply and feed on decaying matter. Louis Pasteur also showed that sterilizing objects could stop bacteria from growing on them, which is a good thing for stopping disease. He also invented a technique for removing bacteria from liquid foods such as milk, so next time you have pasteurized milk, it's named after him.
In our number 7 spot today we have electricity. Many people will credit Ben Franklin with the discovery of electricity, as many of us have heard of his little kite experiment. In this experiment he wanted to prove that lightning was electricity, so he tied a metal key to a kite during a lightning storm, and sure enough, just as he thought, electricity from the storm clouds transferred to the kite and flowed down the string to give him a little shock. I mean, this is a video called Discoveries in History that left people stunned, and I think an electric shock definitely counts as someone being stunned. This led to many other scientists being able to build upon his work and discovery, which all led us to where we are now. I mean, who would have thought that a key on a kite would have helped me film this video with these lights and this camera? There has been evidence that ancient people may have dabbled in electricity themselves, but the extent of it is very much a mystery. Talking about this little experiment is certainly not to undermine the work and intelligence of those who came before Benjamin, because that work is just as important. In our number 6 spot today we have ancient cave art. Just a few short years ago, researchers were in a cave in Sulawesi, Indonesia, when they found some cave paintings. This wouldn't have been a discovery that we would have put on this list until it was realized that this cave art was actually 44,000 years old, making it some of the oldest art that has ever been found. The art depicts some types of buffalo as well as wild pigs, and there are some human-like figures that appear as well, but they are way smaller and also have some animalistic characteristics such as tails and snouts. It appears as though it is some sort of hunting scene, but it is also unclear whether these paintings were made to represent a single story or if they were a series of images made over a course of time. While this painting is not the oldest art we've ever found, if it does in fact depict one single scene, it would be the oldest story ever found. In our number 5 spot today we have this ancient sword. We've all heard the story of Excalibur, but in 2018 an 8-year-old girl had basically the same experience, only a little different. This little girl was playing in a Swedish lake when she stepped on something that felt kind of like a stick. She of course bent down to pick it up, and she said she was going to put it back in the water, but once she saw a handle and a pointy bit at the end, she instead held it up and said, "Daddy, look, I found a sword." Of course her dad came rushing over and grabbed it from her. Once scientists got a look at the sword she found, they were able to date it back at least 1,000 years, saying that it could even be from somewhere around the 5th or 6th century AD, which would place it even before the Viking era by a few hundred years. After another artifact from around the same time period was found in the same area, it drew scientists to the possible conclusion that perhaps this was once an area of sacrifice. For a while the little girl had to keep her discovery a secret and only told her best friend, but once the news broke she was allowed to tell all of her classmates and her teacher, who threw the class a party where they watched and listened to all of her radio and TV interviews she did about her amazing discovery. In the number 4 spot today we have the ancient shipwreck. In 2018, a team of researchers were searching an area of the Black Sea when they stumbled upon a shipwreck. While this is of course interesting, it's not exactly the most shocking thing to find a shipwreck in the sea, but here's the thing. This shipwreck is now believed to be the oldest ever found, dating back to around 400 BC, and it was found still intact despite the 2,400 years it's been. The mast, the rudder, the rowing benches, and even some of the ship's contents were still intact, just waiting to be discovered. Apparently part of the reason for the preserval because of the fact that the water in the depths of the Black Sea is anoxic, or free of oxygen, which is something that I am shocked to discover. The ship is extremely similar to the one depicted on the Siren vase, which is located in the British Museum. One of the researchers on the team who located the wreck explained that it's like another world. It's when the remote operated vehicle drops down through the water column and you see the ship appear in the light at the bottom, so perfectly preserved it feels like you step back in time. In our number 3 spot today we have an early human jawbone. The discovery of a human jawbone completely threw off what scientists and researchers once had mapped out as the timeline for when it was once believed that the early humans left Africa. Before this discovery, the oldest Homo sapien fossil that had ever been found outside of Africa was estimated to be somewhere from 90,000 to 120,000 years old, which helped to create some sort of timeline of how things for the early humans might have gone. Just a few short years ago, however, scientists found an upper left jawbone in a cave in Israel, and they were able to date these remains back 177,000 to 194,000 years ago, suggesting that humans may have migrated out of Africa 50,000 years earlier than what was once believed. It was a huge discovery that only takes us a step closer to learning the origins of our human race. This is just one example that highlights the changes in beliefs and views on our evolutionary origins and our migration throughout the old world all those years ago. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Earth orbits the Sun. This is something that I still think even today people have a hard time wrapping their heads around, and that is that the Earth is not the center of our universe. I am. Just kidding. Standing on the Earth feels so stable and stationary, so it feels so hard to believe that we could be orbiting around something and not the other way around. But alas, it is true. When Copernicus proposed that the planets orbit the sun, his colleagues and peers thought he was losing his mind bringing up such an absurd idea. Even Galileo years later got the same kind of grief for bringing up the idea, and he was able to provide evidence for his theory. Still, people were just not having it. Of course, part of this was the church and the scripture, which claimed that the sun revolved around the earth, but let's leave the religious beliefs to the church and the science to scientists. Everything that goes on in space truly is very hard to conceptualize and really wrap your head around, so I do understand the hesitancy to just change the way of thinking, but we have had hundreds of years to kind of mull it over, so I feel like we should really be all on the same page now. In our number 1 spot today, we have the ingredients of the universe. To piggyback off of the last space point, we have the discovery of what space is made out of. A concept I've really never sat down to think about, but one that now has me spiraling into the abyss. So when we think of space, we usually think first of planets, stars, galaxies, dust, black holes, you know, space stuff. But what happens when a scientist lets you know that all of that stuff only makes up about 4% of what is in space? Well, you start spiraling like me, because what is the rest? Well, to answer that, around 20% of the universe is dark matter. I don't know what that is, but scientists have a bit of an idea. Well, Olivia, that's still not totaling to 100%, so what else is out there? Well, most amazing top 10 viewer, apparently the rest is dark energy, and here's the worst part about that. Your guess on what that is just as good as mine, and the scientist's guess is only more educated, but still, no one really knows. So now, maybe, if you didn't previously know this, you'll also be on a trip to Spiral Town just like me. The discovery of dark energy combined with the lack of answers on what it could be is, to me, about as shocking as it gets.
Number 10. The London Hammer. Many times in history, people have found objects that they think could be evidence of a parallel universe intersecting with our own. Those thoughts were raised again when in 1936 a hammer was found in London, Texas. While on a walk, a couple found a hammer that looked like ones that had been used in the late 1800s. So cool, they found an old hammer. Well, there's actually much more to it. The hammer had not rusted at all, and still hasn't since it's been found, and it was also found encased in rock that dated back to the Cretaceous period. For those of you who don't know, that's around 100 million years ago. This is obviously weird because most people agree that humans only started popping up around 200,000 years ago. So how could this hammer have come to exist? Some people believe that it's the remnant of a parallel universe where humans developed long before they did on our Earth, or that it had potentially traveled back in time. If you live in Texas and want to check out this infamous hammer for yourself, you can find it at Carl Bow's Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas. Number 9. Black holes. The existence of black holes is one of the greatest yet unexplained wonders of our universe, the first picture of a black hole only having been taken back in 2019. So how are they evidence of parallel universes? Well, let's get into some science here. Black holes are so hard to study because everything we've sent out there to try and get information is never seen again, people assuming that it's destroyed upon entering the hole. But Stephen Hawking said that whatever enters a black hole does come out, but it comes out out in another universe. Because of the law of conservation of mass, even if something is destroyed, evidence of its presence would still be able to be seen. They would be visible in hair-like images that trace its path into the black hole, but Stephen Hawking noticed that evidence showed these hairs were not present, meaning the item has completely disappeared from our universe, and I'm really hoping this is making sense. Stephen Hawking says that this is good evidence that they have been transported to another universe, saying black holes are not the eternal prisons that we once thought. Number 8. Cloud City. In October of 2015, Chinese citizens were shocked by what appeared to be a floating city within the sky. Multiple people taking photos and videos of the cityscape that seemed to loom above them within the clouds. The shape was far too specific to brush it off as being anything man-made, and looked to clearly be a cloud city. People were left wondering what it could be, and theories popped up of parallel universes or even secret holographic technology. There was no time to answer these questions or speculate if it had even happened at all, as the exact same thing took place again in China in March of the following year. More photos and videos popping up again of the incident. Many people believe that this supposed city in the sky is evidence of another universe crossing over into our own. Feel free to take a look at the pictures for yourself and make your own decision.
Coming in at number 7, we've got the Rosetta Stone. Now, the ability to read and write ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics had been lost some 1500 years ago. Historians had to largely guess at what hieroglyphics meant until the discovery of the Rosetta Stone in 1799 by French soldiers in Egypt. Made of black granite, the Rosetta Stone contained a decree on behalf of the Egyptian king Ptolemy V over 2,000 years ago. The top was the confusing hieroglyphics, but the bottom was an almost identical text written in Greek. And guess what? People did know how to read Greek, so they were able to translate every single last piece of ancient Egyptian writing just because of one stone. Pretty cool stuff. At number 6 now, we've got fingerprints. Now, humans have known that their fingerprints were different from one another for hundreds of years, but it wasn't until William Herschel, a British administrator in India, started using them alongside signatures in contracts that people began to implement fingerprinting as a form of ID. Then an Argentine police official called Juan Busatich started using them to identify criminals, and this discovery revolutionized the justice system. Within a few years, people weren't just identifying criminals by vague descriptions of their faces. Fingerprinting meant it was a lot easier to tie a criminal to a crime. Good stuff. At number 5, we're going to be talking about the discovery that the Earth goes round the Sun, otherwise known as the heliocentric theory. For thousands of years, people thought that the Earth was the center of the solar system until this guy, Copernicus, came along in the first half of the 16th century and proved through a meticulous scientific method that the observation of the planet's movements only made sense if the Sun was the center of the solar system and not the Earth. Nowadays, we take it for granted that the Earth isn't the center of the solar system, but back then, people didn't really like it, especially the Catholic Church. It went against pretty much everything that people thought at the time, so it was a very big discovery. Coming in number 4 now, we've got evolution, or more specifically, the discovery of the Tuang child. This was a nickname given to the remains of a fossilized primate found in 1924. It was discovered at a quarry site in South Africa and was eventually identified as belonging to a member of a species that was in a transition state between ancient apes and modern day humans. It was dated at being an amazing 2.8 million years old and was a key piece of evidence in proving Darwin right in his theory that humans originated from Africa. And now at number 3, we've got vaccination. Vaccination saving lives is a well-known fact these days. For example, the measles vaccination is estimated to have saved 17.1 million lives since the year 2000. It cannot be understated how many diseases vaccinations have helped prevent. Edward Jenner was an English surgeon who in 1874 noticed that milkmaids often got the mild disease cowpox but never the deadly disease of smallpox. He figured this means that they were in the same family of diseases and catching cowpox made you resistant to smallpox. He injected kids with a form of cowpox and then injected them with a form of smallpox afterwards, and amazingly, for the first time in history, none of them died. This paved the way for modern day vaccinations and it proved his theory correct, but it was a pretty crazy way of doing it. At number 2, we've got DNA. In 1953, biochemists Francis Crick and James Watson were the people who created the first accurate model of the molecular structure deoxyribonucleic acid, otherwise known as DNA. This was a huge breakthrough in science, as DNA is the master code to how living organisms are built, operate, and reproduce. Discovering the properties and shape of our own DNA on the molecular level allowed scientists to develop cures for many deadly diseases. Eventually, this allowed scientists to map out the entire human genome, which is basically the instruction guide on how to build me or you or literally any other human. Very cool stuff. And finally, at number 1, we have got penicillin. Now this one has saved an immeasurable amount of lives since it was first discovered in 1928 by 47-year-old Alexander Fleming. He grew bacteria in small glass plates to study deadly diseases, but struggled to stop mold from getting in there and contaminating it. When he returned to his lab one day from a trip, he found that one of his dishes of bacteria had failed to grow. A type of mold called Penicillium notatum had found its way into the dish and had stopped the growth of bacteria there. This might have been the most important mold ever found because it was eventually developed into the drug penicillin, which has saved millions and millions of lives and is the thing that any doctor will give you if you get a nasty infection.